Another item of technology is that it would be a preference for you to be able to see the speaker as you're seeing the slides. So at the very top right of your screen, you see the word view, viewing options. And so where you see view, if you toggle down to the people lead day of action, and this event is a nationwide event sponsored by a nationwide organization called Indivisible. Indivisible is an organization that started right after the 2016 election. You can see across the bottom of the screen, what is Indivisible? Indivisibles are groups, grassroots groups of citizens who across the country are showing up to tell the incoming members of Congress that we want bold, transformative democracy reforms. So Indivisible is a national organization, and there are hundreds of local organizations. It's a grassroots movement with local organizations, and tonight's program is organized by the Wright County Indivisible Group in Wright County, Minnesota. You see the organizers of who conceived of this idea and worked to organize and bring it to you tonight. The chair of this group is Glenda Tanner Dahlman. Other members of the group are Renee Carterell, John Dietering, Karen Ingman, Mark Nelson, Rose Thielen, and myself, Janice Holter-Kiddock. I will be your moderator for tonight's program. We are all residents of Wright County, Minnesota, everyday citizens working for everybody every day. That's what Indivisible is all about. Our agenda this evening, we have two portions of the program. The first portion is Get Informed. That's one of the missions of Indivisible, that we inform ourselves as citizens, getting the knowledge about the issues of the day, so that when we take action, we are taking informed, educated action on the issues and working very strategically with our networks. The first part of the program, the content will be focused on federal legislation that will be coming up this year in 2021. HR stands for House of Representatives. HR 1 is a bill that is also known as For the People Act. HR 4 is also known as the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. We'll also be addressing statehood for Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C., and court reform. Now, this is the agenda we've been working on with the past couple of weeks. And of course, with the events in recent days, we will be addressing actions about the impeachment process that is going on right now. The last part of the program, after we get informed, will be various different ideas of what we can do as grassroots, everyday citizens to take action to inform our lawmakers of the changes that we would like to see. Some of the examples are an organized calling tree, a phone-a-thon, if you will, how to write letters to the editor, and different action groups. We also have set out for you various activist tools and resources to make these jobs easy for you. So there is a viewing guide. Right now in the chat room, soon a link will appear to a document that is shared in the Google folder. It's a viewing guide. It's called the People Lead Day of Action Viewing Guide. What's in here? Every time we mention in tonight's program, there is a link to a resource for this. Here is a action. Here is the person to contact. Here's the website. Here's the email. All of those different things are all on this one-page document, because we're everyday people working for everybody every day of the year. We're busy people, all of us are. So this is one page that has all of the information. So you can relax during the program as you hear this, get this here, go there, read this. all of that information. You don't have to worry about marking it all down and cutting and pasting it or finding it later on. It's all in this one document. This link will come up several times during tonight's program, and we'll have it again at the end. So don't worry, you're not gonna miss it. So one of those resources looks like this. Our first part of our program is Get Informed. We have for you a 2-page document that looks like the miniature slide that you see there, that has summary information of these 2 pieces of legislation that our speakers tonight will be addressing. So it has bullet points and summaries, so you know what the background information and links for how to find more. We have 3 speakers here this evening to address the issues to Educated this evening. We are so excited to have this lineup of speakers for us tonight. The first speaker is Megan Hatcher Mays. She works in the national office of the Indivisible organization. Second speaker is Keith Ellison, Minnesota's Attorney General. And the third speaker on issues is Rommel Lee, who's the Director of Outreach in Senator Amy Klobuchar's office. While the people are speaking, each speaker will have 10 minutes. We'll have a couple of minutes in between each speaker. And if the time allows, we can pose a question or two to those people. So if you would like to submit a question, please put that into the chat box while that speaker is speaking. So here we go. Our first speaker, I would like to introduce to you Megan Hatcher Mays. She is the Director of Democracy Policy at the National Office of Indivisible. She's going to be talking to us this evening, informing us on the For the People Act, which is also HR Bill number 1. So, Megan.
Hi, hey everybody. My name is Megan Hatcher Mays. I'm the Director of Democracy Policy at Indivisible here in the District of Columbia. I am super excited to be with you all. My husband is a Golden Gopher, so just wanted to share that piece of information. But no, I'm very excited to be here, and thank you so much for having me. And I'm really pleased to be joining such a stellar panel of folks to talk about democracy. As Jan mentioned, you know, this last week here in DC and across the country has been really, really difficult to watch because the outgoing president, Donald Trump, is responsible for inciting a deadly insurrection, an attack on the Capitol that cost 5 people their lives because he was unwilling to accept the results of the 2020 election. It was really scary to watch. It looks like some members of Congress helped. They supported his incitement of this attack, and it's been very difficult. But how that relates to HR 1 is as follows. The reason why Donald Trump was able to come to power in the first place is because our democracy was designed to give a lot of power to a very small group of people. So that's where Donald Trump came from. A healthy democracy never would have elected somebody like Donald Trump in the first place. So what HR 1 does, what the For the People Act does, is start that process of building up a democracy that works by, of, and for the people. For the first time ever, we can have a democracy that works for everybody and not just a very small group of right-wing interests. In fact, our entire democracy reform agenda is represented here tonight. We are pushing aggressively to get HR 1 passed. We are pushing aggressively to get HR 4 passed, and we're super, super excited at the prospect of making the District of Columbia the 51st state. I used to work for Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton, who is our non-voting representative in the House, and she champions the statehood bill every Congress. So we're super excited to hopefully get that done in this Congress. So back to the For the People Act. It addresses some of the root causes that lead to some of these sort of like extreme divisions in the legislative branch. It bans gerrymandering. It imposes really good restrictions on campaign finance. So a lot of really good campaign finance reforms that are aimed at kind of undoing the damage done by the Citizens United decision, improves election security, and imposes ethics reforms on the Supreme Court, which is good because I don't know if folks know this, but Supreme Court justices are not bound by the same code of ethics as every other federal judge. They are not bound by a code of ethics. So HR1 does that. It also improves like reporting requirements, ethics reforms for the executive branch. So a lot of that terrible stuff we saw Donald Trump do, like the self-dealing and kind of shifting government money to his own private coffers, really exploiting the government for his own personal gain. HR1 starts to address some of those issues so that if we do get stuck with sort of like a wannabe Trump in the future, hopefully we won't, but if we do, there will be actually some mechanisms to hold that person accountable. In addition to impeachment, which we saw that particular mechanism be deployed twice for the first time in history. He's the only president in the history of this country to have been impeached twice, which is really critically important because, as we always say, nobody is above the law. So for those who have been participating in our week of actions, I know you've been talking to your representatives and your senators. Fortunately, you have two great senators who are very strong supporters of the For the People Act and statehood, actually, which is good, and the Restoring the Voting Rights Act. That is all great. All of your representatives, I think, except for, I think you've got a couple of Republicans, are on the right side of history here. So that is very good. So just keep up the good work. What's going to be really critically important is that they know that you're paying attention to this vote, that you care a lot about democracy reform, and that you thank them when they ultimately vote the right way. We expect Senators Klobuchar and Smith to vote the right way. They almost always do. So just make sure you are sending them thanks. So I think what we get really good at is holding our Democrats accountable, but we have to remember to thank them as well when they deliver for us. So I'm actually going to stop talking because I'm happy to answer any questions folks might have about HR1 or Indivisible's democracy platform. For those of you who may have already looked at our new guide that's out there in the world, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. And if you have any questions about DC statehood, I know I'm not here to talk about that, but I did used to work on that bill, and I'm just personally really excited about it. So Jan, over to you.
Yes, Megan, would you expand more on that and explain to us about the importance and the need of Washington, D.C. Having statehood? And along with that, could you address the statehood of Puerto Rico?
Sure, yeah. So I don't want to steal Attorney General Ellison's thunder, but so statehood for the District of Columbia is critically important. So just so everyone knows, right now we do not have equal representation in Congress in the same way that you all do. We have a non-voting delegate in the House, and that's it. We have no representation in the Senate at all. And just so to be super duper clear, people in Washington, D.C. pay the exact same federal taxes as everybody else. In fact, we pay a larger share of federal taxes per capita than nearly everywhere else in the country, but we have no voting representation in the House, and we have no representation in the Senate. 700,000 people live in the District of Columbia. We're not all government employees. We're not all swamp people, as Donald Trump would have you believe. We are real people who live here and work here and love living here. And the problem from a democracy perspective is that the Senate, if we don't have representation in the Senate, what happens is the Senate ends up representing a smaller and shrinking group of people. So right now, Democrats over the course of many elections can win millions upon millions more votes than Republicans in Senate elections. And it's almost impossible for Democrats to get a majority, even though they get the majority of the votes. And that's because states with a smaller population have the exact same representation as bigger states. States like Illinois with like big cities like Chicago, or even Minneapolis, New York, all of those places have the exact same representation as smaller states in the South and elsewhere. So what ends up happening is you get a smaller and more extreme group of senators representing a smaller and more extreme electorate, and you disenfranchise the majority of the people that live in this country. So big step forward that you can take is by making DC the 51st state. You immediately enfranchise 700,000 people who kind of are more reflective of America as a whole. On Puerto Rico, we support self-determination for Puerto Rico. I bet Mr. Ellison will get into more of the details. They took a vote on statehood. That vote was a little bit fraught given how it ended up on the ballot, but we support the Representative Velasquez and Representative Ocasio-Cortez have a self-determination bill pending in the House, and we support that for Puerto Rico. Whatever they want is what we want for them. So.
Another question is, can a federal law change state election rules?
So what the Voting Rights Act does is to restore the part of the Voting Rights Act that got gutted by the Supreme Court in 2013. That had a provision in it called preclearance. So what it would do was require states who had had a history of disenfranchising Black voters and voters of color from voting, they would have to clear in advance any changes to the law before they could implement them. So our federal elections are implemented on the state level, but the federal government has a role to play in ensuring that they're fair. So what the John Lewis Voting Rights Act would do would be to restore that part of it, so that any state that wanted to make a major change to their voting apparatus would have to get permission first to make sure that it wasn't unnecessarily targeting folks of color or Black voters, making sure it wasn't in some way discriminating against folks. So that is one way that federal law could do that.
Okay. One last question. And why is it that the Supreme Court doesn't have any standards for behavior? How in the world did that come about?
Yeah, good question. I don't know how that started, but it must be pretty sweet to be a Supreme Court justice. You can pretty much do whatever you want with no consequence. You are unelected. You are insulated from politics. I could not tell you why they don't have to follow the same ethics rules as everybody else, but there is a fix for it. There's a fix for it in HR 1, and there's also a different pending bill. It's one of the court reform bills that we want to make sure gets past this Congress that would impose a very strict code of ethics on the Supreme Court justices, because many of them, we don't know where they give speeches. We don't know who pays for their travel. Some of you may have been following along. The Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas's wife often posts very disturbing right-wing memes. She actually posted about the insurrection last week on her Facebook, and she takes a lot of money from dark money groups. And so we don't know the relationship between Clarence Thomas and these groups that his wife works for as well. And so these ethics reforms really would shed a very strong light on what all is going on, who might be influencing our justices, and who is paying for certain cases to go to be argued in front of the Supreme Court as well. So I hope that helps.
Okay. Very good. I'm going to peek in the chat. Is there anywhere in HR 1 that addresses the Dominion machines that have been documented as not being accurate in the counting of votes?
I don't know that there's anything that talks about specific machines, but it does provide funding for election security. A lot of our voting machines are out of date. They haven't been updated in many, many years. And so HR 1 would provide some funding to make sure our election systems are secure from interference.
Okay. Very good. I think those are all the questions that have been in the chat room here for you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Nope, I'm just really grateful to be working side by side with all of you to pass HR 1, pass HR 4, make DC the 51st state, and finally fix our courts. And so if any of you have any questions for me down the road, you're always welcome to reach out to Scott Ickes, our organizer for y'all, and he can reach out to me. So thanks so much for your dedication. I'm super excited to actually run some offense for the first time. So thanks for staying in this fight.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay. Okay, our next speaker, and I'm just going to have to ask this out loud because Renee, you don't show up in my list of people that I can send a message to. Do we have a stand-in speaker for Mr. Ellison?
I have not seen Mr. Ellison come on to the chat yet, or into the meeting yet. So
Okay,
so I'm guessing he's not here, but if you are here, please unmute yourself and let us know you're here. Maybe we could do Rommel first and then come back.
yeah, that's what I was going to suggest. And like I said, I don't know why in the pull down menu, I can't send messages to you. So
Yeah.
yes, we will go on to our next speaker. If I could only, sorry, there we go. There we go. Okay, our next speaker up then, talking about court reform, is Rama Lee, who is the outreach director at Senator Amy Klobuchar's office.
Great. Well, thank you again, everyone, for, inviting me to participate in this discussion this evening. Just want to say, unfortunately, Senator Klobuchar wasn't able to make it, but, I'm standing in to speak on her behalf. I've been with her office for about 8 or 9 years now, and I'm happy to speak on a lot of these issues that you mentioned. So, yeah, first off, just like to say, Senator Klobuchar, and your organization, we're definitely, marching to the beat of the same drum on a lot of these different issues here. So, when talking about HR1, I'll keep this relatively short just because I know Megan already touched on some of this, but yeah, for HR1, Senator Klobuchar was an original co-sponsor, meaning she, introduced it, in the last Congresses, and, will continue to be an original co-sponsor and lead HR1 in the Senate for the near future. It includes some of, her the provisions that she was championing and fighting for, which includes the Honest Ads Act, which provides more oversight over any sort of political ads that are purchased, just because the foreign interference aspect of it. So that's one of them. And in addition to that, the election security provisions that Megan had mentioned as well, that provide more funding to our state election systems and the cybersecurity behind them to fight and fend off any type of, foreign interference that is out there. So, she's definitely on board, with HR1. We need to do more to, get the corporate money out of politics, make, elections, fair and voting more accessible and, obviously, safe from any type of, interference that might come up as well. In addition to that, she has been a co-sponsor and supports, the S631, which grants statehood to DC as well. And she's spoken, repeatedly of, supporting, Puerto Rico's self-determination and, their decisions when it comes to, statehood. In addition to that, she was also an original co-sponsor and has introduced the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. This is a long time coming, as Megan had mentioned as well. After the Supreme Court decision, it kind of really stripped away a lot of the regulating power and enforcement and oversight power that the federal government has over our state elections. So, making sure we pass that to make sure we can, ensure that elections across, the country and individual states, are fair and honest and, are inclusive and accessible, especially, for our communities of color as well, that have, long been discriminated against by these hateful these hateful actions that have been taken at the state by some of the states at the state level. When it comes to the courts, Senator Klobuchar, has been a consistent supporter of nominating, those that are, independent, fair-minded, honest, and, obviously that come from a diverse set of backgrounds as well. She's always said that, it's important to find those that are conscientious, even-handed, that rely on the facts. And, she's been a consistent supporter of supporting, those, like I said, with diverse backgrounds to join the court, nominating folks like, like Justice Mimi Wright, for example, and stuff like that as well. So she's definitely, in support of that as well. And I know you touched on some of the recent events that have occurred, over the last week. And, Senator Klobuchar has been very busy with that, with her role as the ranking member, likely to become chair of the Rules Committee of the Senate Rules Committee. So, and what the Senate Rules Committee does is, it handles, in addition to election work with the judiciary, it focuses a lot on the administration of the actual, business of the Senate within the Capitol. So after the riots that happened last week and the attacks on the Capitol, Senator Klobuchar, has been very focused, working with various law enforcement agencies to ensure that, the security the security aspects of our Capitol security that failed, we're able to improve on those and beef our security up as well. And in addition to her role on the Rules Committee, working on these two aspects, she's also a co-chair of the inauguration that's coming up next week for President-elect Biden. So, and obviously with the events from last week, she's very, very focused on, the security for this upcoming inauguration to make sure that, everything goes seamlessly and everyone is safe from that as well. So, with that note, I'll take any questions that, anyone might have.
One of the questions that came up, there's been a lot of talk about changing the number of people on the court or other reforms like each president getting to nominate someone on the court every 4 years.
Hey, Jan. Keith Ellingson is here, so maybe we could ask if Rama will wait until after Mr.
Well,
Ellingson.
I'd rather finish one topic before the next.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And so we're talking about court reform, Rommel. And while we're on that topic, if you can address that, are you still there?
I am, yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
I'll
there
just speak to that a little bit. I know that it's a very hot topic right now, especially amongst in progressive circles right now. A lot of that depends ultimately, on how between the combination of Senate leadership and how the president wants to approach this issue. I know there has been some. Now, I wouldn't necessarily say disagreement because I don't want to speak on their behalf, but it doesn't seem like either side is necessarily both fully on board with it quite yet. And obviously, our numbers in the Senate right now are pretty razor thin, with Vice President-elect Harris, she would be providing, the winning vote in a lot of cases. So, a lot of these rules, also require, or a lot of these changes also require, a veto-proof majority. So that's 60 senators as opposed to just the 51 simple majority that, you can pass with certain things through appropriations and funding, for example. But, so it's going to be a little bit of an uphill challenge is just from my perspective of, seeing that battle take place if it were to take place. So, ultimately, a lot of it, I feel like depends on, how future Senate Majority Leader Schumer, and the president and the rest of leadership, want to, move forward with tackling this issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the court? Well, thank you so much for joining us here. It's so important for us to hear directly from the people who are working literally on the front lines. And so I thank you very much for coming to inform us, and thank you. Have a great evening.
Yeah. Hey, thank you again for having me. I'm gonna sign off now. So.
Okay, this is great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, the next part of our program is getting informed from Keith Ellison. He's going to address the voting rights that are proposed in the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. And he's also going to talk about Puerto Rico statehood. Again, any questions you have for Mr. Ellison, put them into the chat room. Thank you, Mr. Ellison.
Yeah, I don't know much about Puerto Rican statehood. Nobody told me I was here to talk about that. But I do know about being an attorney general, and I do know about being in Congress. And I'd be more than happy to discuss those things. But let me just tell you, thank you for having me today. It's a real honor and a privilege to be with you. I think that we are at a moment in time when organizing really needs to take a front seat. Today, something happened, which all we have to do is stand back and say to our friends, people of goodwill, progressives, Democrats, anybody, even moderate Republicans, and say, see there, those people are truly a fascist, neo-Confederates, anti-Semites, racists, and they're deluded. And they're all enthralled to a fascist dictator who's now been impeached more times than he has had terms, right? He had 1 term and 2 impeachments. So that's a record. On the other hand, just a few weeks ago, look at what happened in Georgia. Because people organized, they got out there in the street and they talked to their neighbors and they did deep canvassing and they invited people to democracy, they won. And so people want to say, well, the conservatives want to say, well, they lost Georgia because of Trump. No, we won Georgia because we organized, because Stacey Abrams went out and organized a lot of people and got them involved and invited them to democracy and let them be a part of this great nation of ours, which will only get better as more people participate. So 2 things happened today. One, in the last few days. One is the ugly face of fascism was unmasked. And 2, just a few weeks ago, grassroots organizing was vindicated. So my thought is, I don't care where you might be, what city you might be in, I don't care where you are. Talking to people and listening to them and sharing them a vision of shared prosperity wins elections. It's also moral and good, and it's right, and it's fair, and it's just. And on top of that, in addition to that, the badness of this pernicious philosophy that, that rich people don't have enough money and everybody else has way too much. The idea that, some people, they don't want equality. They don't want equity. They want supremacy. They want privilege above others. They don't want to be equal to women. They don't want to be equal to brown people. They don't want to be equal to working white men. They don't want to be, they want privileges and they want to be exalted above their neighbors. That philosophy has been rejected and grassroots organizing and engagement has been vindicated. It's a very important lesson to learn. And let me tell you, back, say 4 years ago, I was on the Stephanopoulos show, the Sunday morning TV show. Anybody ever heard of it? And somebody asked me about Trump, and this was right when he was running, before he won. And I said, look, this guy has a lot of momentum. He could win. They laughed. I don't know if y'all ever saw that video, but they kind of fell over and had a big old belly laugh. What I want to say now is that, by golly, Trump's not done. And he may keep organizing and somebody's going to want to pick up his mantle. You can't fight one kind of supremacy with another. You can fight supremacy with unity and community. You can fight supremacy ideas with embracing humanity and our shared humanity together. And so Indivisible right now really needs to kick it into a whole nother gear. We got some important municipal elections coming up, and what happens at the local level is super important. And we have some really important elections just in a couple of years in the midterms. And let me tell you, whoever the party opposite, whoever does not have the presidency generally has a bad first midterm. That's kind of a rule of thumb. Doesn't matter who it is. If there's a Republican in the White House, the Democrats do well on the first midterm, and then vice versa. We can beat the trend if we really, really get out there and engage people. I just want to say a few other things. As your Attorney General, I spent 12 years in Congress, and I've never regretted a day of leaving Congress except today. I wish I could have voted to impeach Trump. What I have been doing is working on criminal justice reform. In that regard, we have a statewide program for expungements, second chances. We have a statewide program. You go on our website, ag.state.mn.us, and you can sign up and be a part of our expungement program if you need it. The criminal justice system has gone too far in terms of punitive stuff. We got to have second chances for people. And I do believe in accountability. If you harm folks, you have to be held accountable. But if you change your life around and you've got a drug conviction, 20 years old, and you haven't done anything, I think you should get another shot at a life, right? I'm on the pardon board, and we're working hard on the pardon board. And we just, as you know, we just commuted the sentence of Maya Burrell, and you may have seen that. Anybody see that one? Young man went to prison at 16. Evidence that he's innocent came out. He's free now. And then, of course, we're prosecuting the case against the officers who killed George Floyd, and that is going forward as well. We're also suing on behalf of Minnesotans, holding ExxonMobil accountable, holding Juul accountable, holding the big opioid, the Sackler family accountable. So we're trying to hold people accountable on that front, help people protect people's income and afford their lives. So what I'd like to do is just ask you all to just know that, we're going to step forward and do all we can to protect Minnesotans. I just saw somebody ask me about line 3. Let me answer line 3 very directly. I'm a creature of law. I have to do what the law says. I have to do everything the law allows, but I can't do more than the law allows. Line 3 is a decision in the hands of the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, the Public Utilities Commission, and Commerce. I do not have a say-so in that any more than any other citizen. Now, you may say, well, you're the AG. True, my office does represent them, but in the same way a lawyer does. If you hire a lawyer and you say, I want you to sue for my divorce, they got to do your divorce. If you say sue because I slipped and I fell, that's what they do. They're there to represent a client. The client is the decision maker. I will say that I don't like line 3, and I hope we don't get it, and I'm not a fan of line 3. But I will say that my office is not in a position to make a policy decision on line 3. If you want that, call the governor, call the Secretary of Commerce, the Commissioner of Commerce, call the Public Utilities Commission, call the Pollution Control Agency. I'm not trying to dodge anything. I'm telling you that 2 + 2 = 4. Now, some supercharged enviros are like, you're lying, you can do something. I'm like, I cannot. And I just hope you believe me. Sometimes people just don't want to, they don't want to deal with the truth, but that's just the reality of it. Somebody was asked a question about
voter
defining
ID.
small business. Let me say this about that. There are 10,000 restaurants in the state of Minnesota. 10,000. There are 1,500 bars, 1,500. We have only had to sue around 11 bars or restaurants. Everybody else voluntarily complies. Everybody else says, you know what? COVID is very dangerous, lethal disease, and we're going to abide by the executive orders for the sake of our customers and our staff members. A few people say that they have the right to spread COVID, and they have fought to try to do that, and I have taken them to court. Yes, I have. But I've also advocated with federal and state authorities to give money to small businesses so they can make it through this difficult time. I know they have a tough time, and I am very, very sorry that they had to be restricted in their access, but I'm sorry, we just cannot spread COVID. My mother died because of COVID-19. I don't want anybody else to suffer that. And so, yes, I am enforcing the executive orders, but overwhelmingly, people are complying. voluntarily because they know it's right. So with that, I'll just wrap up. I'll answer any questions people have. Somebody said, aren't the COVID and deaths down? Yeah, they have gone down, but they're still much higher than they were back in March. Yes, they're much higher. They're much higher. They're down a lot, but they're higher than they were when this thing started. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions as I see them pop up. I'll answer them.
Yeah, there is a question that came up earlier about voter ID. That's an issue.
Yeah,
It
what was that
sounds
one?
so logical when you don't understand the background of it. Why doesn't somebody have to show an ID? And how is having the voter ID a discriminatory practice? If you could address that.
Good question. So, way back when this country passed the 15th Amendment, which allowed all Black men to vote, newly freed slaves. Then after that, we passed the 19th Amendment, letting all women vote. Then we passed the 24th Amendment, getting rid of the poll tax. Then we passed the 26th Amendment, saying everybody over 18 can vote. We've had voting expand. During all that time, we never had voter ID. We never had it. And when nobody ever claimed about stolen elections. And how come we could elect Lincoln and Roosevelt, Truman, Eisenhower, Nixon, Johnson, Clinton, and even Trump? And all these states in Minnesota didn't have photo ID, but now we got to have it. If somebody can show me that there's this problem with imposter voting, I'll be more than happy to say, yeah, let's look at it. It's not a problem. But let me tell you what it will do. Anybody without an ID won't be able to vote. You might have been voting your whole life, but if you don't have the money to go get an ID, you won't be able to vote. And you say, well, an ID only costs a few bucks and maybe we can make them free. Okay, fine. But will you get the documents that undergird the ID for free? What about somebody's birth certificate, social security, all these kind of documents you need to get an ID? And that does cost money and time. And it has a disproportionate negative impact on the poor, people of color, senior citizens, and veterans. So if we don't really need it, and it does hurt some people, why do we need it? It's voting suppression. So that's why I'm against it.
Okay, thank you. I'm looking through in the chat if there are more questions that came up. Let's see.
Oh,
Well,
you know what? I think I may have to go.
Okay.
I do want to apologize to everybody that I may need to leave quickly.
That is fine. I just peeked through the chat if there were any other burning questions while we head here. We so appreciate that you took the time to put us on today's schedule and address us directly.
I'll come back. I'm happy to come back. Let me thank you for inviting me, and I'll come back. And you all be well and have a great day. And let me tell you, it is a great time to get out there and organize voters right now. Go for it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, just a moment while the screen is switching here. Okay. There we go. So this brings us to the second part of tonight's program. We've been informed on federal legislation and several other different issues, and we have some resources now, and we are strategically organizing ways for people to get involved, because we hear the news. We hear the "I've had enough." I hear that and see that every day. Have you had enough? I've had enough. We've had enough. And many times it doesn't feel like, well, what can we do? What can we do? I'm just a person. And we all know that, oh, no change has ever happened except for a small group of people. But really, do our efforts make a difference? What power do we really have? How can the people lead? The people can lead when the people are organized. The people can lead when the people are networked and they work strategically. The people can lead when we take the initiative. And so we have various ways that we can invite your participation in this democracy that we live in, to protect the democracy and to have it into the future for future generations. So I'm going to talk about 5 different ways that people can get involved. Again, we'll have tools and resources to make this something that is doable and people feel comfortable in participation. So look for it, listen for a way or 2 or 3 that you can be part of the people leading us in 2021. Number 1 is an Emmer Phone-a-thon. I'll explain the details of these as each one. Second topic will be how to write letters to the editor. Number 3, a group that is working on connecting with and monitoring Tom Emmer. He is the U.S. Congressperson from Congressional District 6 here in Minnesota, which includes Wright County and several other neighboring counties. The people lead organizers, getting involved with the group that created this program that you're attending here tonight, and information of how to contact the local indivisible chapter of this nationwide organization. So I'm going to address the Emmer Phone-a-thon. Here's the thing. We think, well, making a phone call, we see these all the time. Make a phone call, write a letter. And you sit at home and you wonder, well, does it make any difference? Well, it does, because this is what happens in the offices of our representatives. They have staff. And I can tell you, I have been at lobbying training here at the state level and at Washington, D.C. And the staffers in these offices say that they keep a tally when they hear from constituents and they say, I would like the congressperson to support thus and so. I would like that the congressperson does not support this and that and the other issue. They keep tallies in all of these offices. So there's staff that directly advise our lawmakers are able to say 152 people from your constituency called this week and want you to support this something or not support something else. So what happens when we stay silent? When we stay silent, when we don't make the phone calls or send the cards or write the letters, other people are telling our legislators what they think. They do care what we think. They care about our votes. And when large numbers ask for support for something, that resonates with them. So here's the idea, the Emmer Phone-a-thon, that on Friday, January 15th, every 15 minutes in Congressman Emmer's office in Minnesota, and every 15 minutes in Congressman Emmer's office in Washington, D.C., the phone rings and one of his constituents gives him a message and says, I want you to support the For the People Act. I want you to support the John Lewis Voter Advancement Act. I want you to support the impeachment and removal of Donald Trump from office. I'm calling you to action. How do you get involved with this and how does it work? It's simple. We're making it easy for you, right? So this is how the phone-a-thon works. In that viewer guide, remember that link I told you about in that one page that has all the links on it? On that viewer guide, you'll have a link to this document that is in a Google Drive. That document has a little schedule here, and every 15 minutes of the day, all you do is you sign up for a time slot like Janice Holter Kiddock did here from Delano, Minnesota. I signed up for 9 a.m. So at 9 a.m. on Friday, I'm going to call the number in Minnesota. I'm going to call the number in Washington, D.C. And I'm going to do these two things. Number one, if I get a hold of a person, I'll give them this information. If they don't ask for it, I'm sure they will. Or if I leave a voicemail, I will say my name and where I live. That's very important because that lets the congressperson know that I'm a person with a name and I live in that district. And then I leave a short message. You don't have to write out a paragraph and be all eloquent and persuasive. Remember, most of the time, this staffer is just going to take down that a constituent named Jan Holter Kiddock called and she wants you to support this, not support that. They're just going to do a tally. So don't get stressed about how you're going to organize your message. I'm going to call and I'm going to say, I want Donald Trump impeached and I want the Senate to convict, and I want to do whatever you can in your network and within your party to make that happen. I want to support these bills, and if I want to add anything else to my message, I will on that day. So all you do to do the phone-a-thon is you just open up that document, you go and type in your name. More than a name is already there and you want that time slot and all the other slots are filled, just go ahead and fill in your name. And again, where are you going to find that link? That viewer guide, the link that's in the chat box. So that's one way to get involved and help be part of the people leading, is taking part in the Emmer Phone-a-thon. And of course, you can call Emmer's office any day. It doesn't have to be on Friday, January 15th. Call him on the 16th, the 17th, the 18th, the 19th, the 20th, anytime you want. He's there to represent the people, and we are the people. So have him work for the people. Okay, another item is local letters to the editors. That sometimes feels kind of daunting, and so we're going to get some help with that. We're going to get some tips on how we can do that. There is a resource that we have for you, a link for local contacts for Wright County for all the papers. Now, this is just a little portion of what it shows, but this goes on and lists all the newspapers that are in the Wright County. So it tells you the link, the number of word parameters that they have, when their publication deadline is. So, and now we are so fortunate tonight to get some help with writing letters to the editor. Because like I said, if we don't write letters, if we don't make phone calls, other people speak for us. So if the people are going to lead, we have to speak. We have with us here this evening, Scott Ickes, who is a regional organizer for Indivisible, serving Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. So, Scott, take it away.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Hi there. Yeah, I'm fired up. I wish I was in Emmer's district. This is a great event. Thank you very much. I'm in St. Paul and I'm feeling like I'm missing out. So I'm going to go home and I am home. Sorry. I'm in the basement, in my basement in St. Paul, and I'm going to, I can start my video. Woohoo. Hey, all right. So now you can see I'm in my basement in St. Paul, and I'm going to call Betty McCollum tomorrow and thank her for supporting impeachment. Right. So I've been asked to talk for 5-6 minutes about letters to the editor and some of the top lines. And I do this normally over a 45-50 minute training, in fact, because there's a lot of unpacking to do with political messaging. And but I've only got 5 or 6 minutes tonight. So I'm going to just hit the top lines, and we've got 3 slides. The first is the technicalities of letters to the editor writing. You can read these. I can go through them real quick. 1 point per letter. If you've got more than one main point, you break it up into more letters, and that's fantastic. Keep it short and to the point. Just the other day,
Sorry, I moved your slide.
That's all good.
There we go.
Hey, just the other day I was reading the letter to the editor section, and I only read the short ones. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just did it. So short and to the point, because the short ones get read the most. Check the word limit of the newspaper ahead of time. Definitely check your spelling and grammar, especially if you're doing it digitally. You send this thing in, and sometimes editors don't even bother checking it. They just like the cut of your jib. This fits with what they're looking for. They send it straight, and you're going to be embarrassed because they don't check your grammar and your spelling sometimes. Use ordinary words, have a great first sentence. This could be a number of things. Use emotion, build on a previous letter. Sort of, yeah, there's kind of stages to the argument here. People get hooked into that. Hook them on something that you know they care about. And also another great way of doing this is through a sort of a universal value as well. And I'll get to that a little bit further down. I've put in here, give it a title of your own. Sometimes comment sections, they'll title everything, or they'll try to organize it for you. They might miss the point of your letter and give it the wrong title. So suggest a title or actually give them one. And then also don't be shy about engaging the editor and building a relationship with her or him. Get to know them by asking them questions. And then maybe at some point you can also talk to them, say, maybe could you give me a little bit of strategy? When do you think this will get most likely to be read, or Friday's better days, that sort of thing. And then also you can submit to more than one newspaper. It's good practice, though, if you do get published in one, that you let the editor know, hey, I've just been published in the Tribune. I'd still like it to go out in the local newspaper. Would you be willing to do that? But you could certainly submit to more than one newspaper. Okay, the next slide, please. This slide is about strategy. I've broken up into like individual strategy and then sort of a team strategy. I want you to embrace your role in the community. I want you to think about who you are, what your job's been, what your occupation's been, what role you have in your family, what's your relationship to your relatives, what's your personal history, are you a coach, were you a Girl Scout leader? Even if it's mother, grandmother, father, son, daughter, those all run deep for most people. So embrace that and use that. And you're luckiest if you're a pediatrician, because it turns out that they're the people that are most trusted among all the professions. So yeah, if you got that going for you, but if you don't give up on this. Definitely anchor into some of the ways that you know you can get people to understand you on a human level. Because then they're going to be more interested in hearing your story, and they're going to be less likely to argue with you. If you're throwing a bunch of facts at them, they can dismiss those, as we've seen, really, really easily. Oh, you must watch too much CNN. They can't dismiss you as a human being and your experiences. Also, I think be nonpartisan. There's no need to sign it as a member of your indivisible group either. It's better to have a kind of an authentic voice that's more convincing. The team strategy, if you build a team inside your indivisible group or your other groups or across groups, that's great because you can support each other, you can help edit each other. It also helps you get around submission limits. So if you're somebody who's particularly got a lot to say, if you're in a group, then you can participate in something akin to sort of a ghostwriting phenomenon, right? So other people might like your ideas. They might want to represent those ideas as theirs. That's totally legitimate. Just keep it ethical. And this is fine. Also, very important, you're trying to normalize ideas and you're trying to nullify others. And so having a regular stream of letters helps to normalize an issue. And then also, if you've got more people, you've got more feelers out. And so you know what the messaging overall is out there. And you might know a local candidate likes to say it like this, likes to talk about this, and you want her to get elected. So echoing her language in your letter to the editor leading up to an election. Imagine somebody reads the newspaper that morning, then they go and get the mail, and without really being conscious of it, there's a mailer from that candidate, and you've created a little echo chamber in that person's house, at least for a day. All right. Okay, next slide, please. You don't have to just follow local figures too. I mean, Bernie Sanders was somebody who was really great on messaging, and so you could just try and echo Bernie Sanders, for example. Right, okay, letters to the editor on messaging. This is a little more complicated. But here's the things I want you to know. Your audience is not Trump supporters. Don't argue with them. It's not worth it. Your audience is the persuadables. And the idea of the persuadable comes from asocommunications.com. So you can look them up later. They're fantastic. It stands for Anat Shankar Osorio, who's from Wisconsin. And she's done a whole lot of amazing research with other organizations to come up with this idea of the persuadables. The persuadables are sort of low information swing voters, right? That person that you're like, how could you vote for Obama one year and Trump for another year? Are you not paying attention? Yeah, the truth is they're not paying attention. They're also very persuadable. Whatever's the boldest, most confident, most repeated, loudest message that they've been hearing is the one that sticks with them, particularly if it was the last one that they heard. What's really great about persuadables, from our point of view, is they're about 45% of the population of Minnesota, which means there's a lot of, if you're thinking, my letter to the editor isn't going to do anything, it's just remind yourself, 45% of the population is persuadable. They might talk like a Fox News junkie right now. That doesn't mean deep down they are. They also hold liberal values. It's been tested. They also hold progressive values. It's just they talk like a Trumper now because that's the air they breathe at the moment. And they're persuadable. So that's what they repeat. It makes them look unreachable, but they aren't. So get in their heads. Okay, I'll try to go through this next bit quickly. Be careful to, so don't argue against anything, only argue for things. Be careful to avoid conservative frames. This thinking comes from George Lakoff. He wrote a book called Don't Think of an Elephant. And the main insight there is if you're arguing with somebody and you're saying things like, that's not an elephant has big ears and a trunk, that's definitely not an elephant. All you've done is you've created the mental image in people's heads of an elephant. So the title of his book is Don't Think of an Elephant. So arguing with people on their framing just reinforces their framing. And so another political example really quick is we love the expression, no human being is illegal. We thought that was great. Progressives, I love that. I was like, yes, I'm going to say this all the time. I'm going to get a lawn sign for it. But the truth is, if you're using that, you're repeating illegal. You're actually creating a mental image for persuadables of an illegal immigrant. Whatever they've got in their head, that's what you've left them with, even though for me, you've left me with a warm, fuzzy feeling about humanity. So if your audience is the persuadables, watch those conservative frames. Instead, use progressive frames like collective solutions, abundance, government as a force for good, inclusion, that sort of thing. Minimize your use of facts. And then I want to say, don't leave race or any sort of difference open to interpretation. So if you're going to say something like, it's awful how COVID has disproportionately affected communities of color. And then you're going to me, you're saying, wow, we have structural racism and real inequities in our healthcare system that need to be handled. But to progressive, when you just leave it at that, you're letting them interpret the data. You're letting them interpret that story of 11 to 15% higher death rates among communities of color. And the way that they're going to interpret it too often for our taste is because they live, and we all live in this racist sea of our own history as a nation, they're going to hear that COVID hurt communities of color worse than white communities. And they're going to say to themselves, well, maybe they deserved it, or they must have deserved it. And they're going to move on. So you have to say why. Don't just say it hurt it because, don't just leave it at that. It hurt communities of color. You've got to say because of inequality in our healthcare system and structural racism. Okay, to finish this out, use universal values, use personal stories, call out the politicians if the newspaper will let you, but always again, say why they're doing what they're doing and try to drive home they're doing it because they want to benefit the wealthy and they want to benefit the lobbyists and they want to benefit their corporations. They don't care about all of us. And then the last thing is people love Minnesota. So get Minnesota in there as a value, Minnesota values as much as possible. Thank you, Jen. I'll look through the chat, and if people have questions, I'll try and answer them as we move forward. Does that sound okay?
I don't know where Jan is at, Scott, but yes, you could answer the chat questions in the, give people responses in the chat box, or we could
Okay.
ask a couple right now while Jan is,
Taking herself off mute.
yeah,
Okay.
she must be stuck or something. So,
All right. I'll see y'all in the chat.
well, people have
Okay,
access to
there
your
we go.
slides. Scott, oops, he's gone.
Okay, can you hear and see me now?
Yes, we can hear you, Jan, now.
Okay, can you see me?
We can see you. Yes, but
Yes, we
the
can see you.
slides are still up.
Yes, that's fine. Okay, you can hear me and see the slide.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So, yeah, I wanted to actually comment on a couple of things that you mentioned. What really struck me was normalizing an issue. The more that somebody hears something, when you hear it and you hear it and you hear it, you start to believe that. And that is a lesson we have all learned the hard way in the past 4 years, that even if that message is a lie, if you hear it and you hear it and you hear it, you start to believe it. So it's true too. And another point of ours, that if we are silent, people believe the messages that they hear over and over again. Another thing about the letters to the editor to our local papers, one thing that has been very frustrating, and people say enough is enough, because so many people do not watch news and do not read newspapers. But you know what? In our county, in Wright County, a lot of people read the local newspaper. And so that's a real value of what Scott is offering to us in getting letters to editors in our local news. One question for you, Scott, is asked: how is data in fact not helpful? Why are facts just not important?
I'm not going to say they're not important. So before
Well, important in persuasion, I guess. Yeah.
I'm going to answer that in the chat. I saw that one and I love it, and I'm cranking out an answer right now. But just to say that I was in academia for 25 years before I started doing this work, and I am a big fan of facts and data, and my students will tell you that. However, for political messaging, that shifts quite a bit. And so I'll try to justify that in the chat for, I think it was Sue who asked that question. Really good question.
Okay.
Really good question.
Very good. So we'll let people continue in the chat room. Thank you for answering those questions and following our feed there. We'll go on to the next strategy here. Okay, here's another strategy, and that is people working directly with our representatives. With this group, we have decided to have a focus on Tom Emmer, our congressman here in CD6. CD6 stands for Congressional District 6 out of Minnesota. And if people aren't familiar with that, all of Wright County, most of Wright County is CD6. It goes up to St. Cloud, and then it goes east all the way over to areas like Stillwater. It's a huge, huge district. And we have one of our organizers of this event, Rose Thielen, is going to address us about Tom Emmer initiatives. So, Rose.
Okay, hi everybody. Glad to have so many people on the call. Sorry for some of the glitches, but go to the links and check out the HR1 and HR4. They're great. I was going to go into hiding and go into a cave and quit once I got rid of Trump. I spent the last year trying to do that with so many of the rest of us. And then I heard about this effort that was put on by Indivisible. That's another thing to do, is check out Indivisible. Go to the toolkit, and the People Lead Toolkit, and you'll get all kinds of information about this particular effort, which is going on all over the country. But anyway, what I like about Indivisible is that it's coordinating people across the country and using some of the same strategies that the Tea Party used to, as you know, take over our Congress and replace it with a bunch of bootlickers, Trump bootlickers. So anyway, we are going to do, we're building this as we fly, and it's the Emers Progressive Constituency. At first we were going to call it the Emmer Watch Group, but decided that was too, I don't know, too stocky or something. And we decided that Emmer's problem, and we're going to take him at his word, is that he thinks only the right wing should be have his ear. And so we're going to join together to become his progressive constituency. And so what we want to do is work to, in fact, get him to support HR1 and HR4. And again, you got some sketchy overview of HR1, and Ellison wasn't quite geared up for HR4 either, but that essentially is the effort to restore the Voting Rights Act that was suspended. But anyway, Emmer, as we all know, is a very conservative and has been fairly unresponsive to anybody but the far right. And so people may go, oh, well, save your breath. It's not going to make much of a difference. I've said that myself on occasion. But, you know, it like Jan said, it isn't right for us to remain silent. We've just reinforced his belief that all that's important is the right wing. So we're just going to organize our working together to get him to hear us, and to do something that will in fact unite us. Because what Emmer said as of last Sunday was that he didn't support impeachment. He wanted to unite the country. Or he wanted to unite people, go forward, forget Trump, just let's get united. Now, one of the things that Trump didn't say is, who's he trying to unite? Is he trying to unite the Boogaloo Boys and the Proud Boys, get them coordinating with their fur skins and stuff? Or, you know, is he uniting QAnon, getting them singing them from the same sheet music? What we know is that that's pretty much the only wing, the only group of people in the US that he's been listening to. And so we're going to get together, primarily anybody who wants to join us. We are going to monitor his activities, and then we're going to organize responses to those activities. And then we're going to make sure that people are aware of his activities and provide opportunities for them to email him, to call him, to do some social media stuff, whatever it takes. We just need to amplify our voices. And again, now people might say, well, save your breath. But one of the things that Indivisible National says is that there's 3 types of legislators. We have what are called the supportive, we have the unreliables, and we have the problematic. And of course, Emmer fits into the problematic categories. But one of the things that they suggest is don't just ignore the problematic. And this is kind of goes against it doesn't go against what Scott's saying. It's just that we're maybe not going to persuade him, but we may persuade others that there's some things that's not right with his positions. You know, on the one hand, he says he wants to unite people. And on the other hand, he doesn't want democratic reforms, and the only people he's listening to is the far right. So how do we make him more visible? And it's going to be a challenge. So what we're looking for is for you to join us. And like I say, we're building the infrastructure as we go. We're hoping that we can, make it simple so we don't have to spend hours on this, but, a way for you to, first of all, maybe you're going to monitor a particular aspect of his activities, like what's he doing with the RNC, or maybe what is he saying this week in his email blast to his constituents. I just got one today talking about COVID. It's like, are we tone deaf, or did you not realize that there's an impeachment going on? All of a sudden, he's a big supporter of doing everything we need to about COVID. So anyway, we want to build this infrastructure. We want to monitor Emmer's activities. Then we want to figure out, okay, what do we need to do? How can we get the word out about this? And then how can we take action, get it to our various networks and you know, get some buzz going. And so join us. And you see the wrightcountyindivisible@gmail.com. You can do any one of those. Maybe you say, okay, I don't want to do 1, 2, or 3, but I will get emails that tell me who I should call or what I should say when I call him or what I should put on my Facebook page, that sort of thing. So let us know. We need to build, like I say, this progressive constituency. We're going to advise him. We're going to make him aware of the fact that there's more than the right wing, that uniting our country is about passing HR 1 and HR 4. In the phone-a-thon, you'll see that one of the message that we're going to be sending to him, we're asking you to send, is there were 3 points. Support the impeachment, which is off the table now, of course, but we can say, look, we're disappointed in the fact, very disappointed or angry or whatever you want to say, that you didn't support impeachment, but we understand that you want to move forward to unite the country. So to that end, we want you to sponsor HR 1 and HR 4. And that's all you need to say. You don't need to even know completely what it's about. Take a look at the documents. So it's all about democracy reforms. It's about getting rid of gerrymandering, the revolving door of lobbyists and government officials. It's about I can't remember all of them. It's just everything that you ever want to have happen to change what's going down right now. So anyway, that's it, I think. Does anybody have any questions for me? I think I covered it all. Let me see. I guess that's it. Oh, I wanted to say another thing. Indivisible, the US Indivisible is great, and Wright County Indivisible. If you go, okay, I just don't know what to do, join Wright County Indivisible. They'll send you emails. We'll coordinate our efforts at the local level, and they're in touch with the national Indivisible, and Scott Ickes is involved with Indivisible at the state level. He's the guy who kind of filters it down to us and hopefully filters it back up to them. But you know, let's do something. Let's take this country back. I can't believe, and I think first and foremost too is to let Emmer know how absolutely outrageous he is that he supports what happened last week in the Capitol. So I guess that's about it for me. Anything else, Jan? Can you think of anything? Did I forget anything? No.
No, that's great. You
All
are a
right.
great host person for us. There we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, I want to, now you see on the chat that the host of this meeting is Glenda Tanner Dahlman. She has been the organizer of the group that created the event that's going on this evening. If you would like to get involved with this group, put a message in the chat box, put that message, you can address it directly to Glenda. When you're in the chat box, there's a pull down menu. And so you can send a message to everyone, or you can send a message directly to Glenda with your name and contact information. Nobody else will see it. You can do that right now in the chat box. I feel like I'm at a phone-a-thon. Go to the chat box right now and find Glenda's name and send her a message. If you'd prefer doing communication versus via email, you can email her at the Indivisible address. That's right there at the bottom of the screen. And of course, there's a link to it on the viewer guide, wrightcountyindivisible@gmail.com. Glenda, would you like to greet the group or say anything?
Yes, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight. A wealth of information has been shared, and going forward, I think, we've had a great group and we can do so many good things going forward. So again, thank you everybody for attending our meeting. And, we need to participate in the call to actions. So thank you again and have a good evening.
Thank you, Glenda. Okay, send her an email and she can help you get involved. Again, this event was sponsored by the local chapter of Wright County Indivisible. Wright County, we are all, like I said earlier, we are just everyday people, everyday citizens. We've had enough. We've had enough. And so we're everyday people working for everyday people working every day. So the Wright County Indivisible does have monthly programs, always with these same two things that are around tonight's program, getting ourselves informed about the issues. Frequently, there is someone who is an expert on a variety of issues, whether it is immigrants or voting rights or climate, various different issues that we get informed about, meeting the second Monday evening of every month. We used to meet in person, and now, of course, we do virtual meetings. And how do you find out about that? WrightCountyIndivisible.org. That's on your screen here. As we wrap up, what has come to me is a memory of when I was in Rochester, New York. You can visit homes, a house where Susan B. Anthony and several other women would just meet in the living room. They would meet in the living room and they'd talk about how they can get the vote for women. The reason women can vote today is because a group of 4 women met in a living room of somebody's house and they said, hey, let's do something. If it weren't for those grassroots initiatives, 4 women in a living room, that's why I can go to the ballot box right now. So our efforts do make a difference. They make a difference when we are united, because when we're united, we're indivisible, and therefore our name. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you for attending. There's the website and everything. And again, download that viewer document. And if you have trouble finding anything or everything, just go to WrightCountyIndivisible.org, WrightCountyIndivisible@gmail.com. We'll hook you up. We'll get you networked with whatever it is. And to be able to participate and be part of the people who are leading us to protect our democracy, and whatever issue you are passionate about, I can tell you there is such diversity in the Wright County Indivisible group. You will find like-minded people who are working on an issue that's important to you, and you can join right along and be part of that initiative as well. So it's our time right now exactly to be signing off. Thank you again for joining us, and take care, be safe, and stay with us. Don't let us be indivisible. Thank you.